Well, accidentally, really. I wrote a letter to one of my favourite music magazines, complaining about them, basically, saying what I thought was awful in their magazine and how it could be improved. And luckily enough, they happened to be in the mood for hiring that week, and they printed my letter on the letters page. And it was Melody Maker, an old music magazine, and asked if I could do any better. And being a cocky, arrogant little git as I was back then, I thought I could. So I phoned them, said so. They asked me to do some sample articles, and they liked them sufficiently enough to get me to start reviewing some gigs and records. But obviously, I didn't sit back initially and think I want to be a freelancer. It just kind of happened, you know.
Are you glad it happened though?
Without a shadow of a doubt, I had a right old laugh.
So you definitely enjoy it.
I enjoy it's balances. I mean, sometimes I enjoyed it massively. You know, being flown all over the world and meeting lots of famous people. Alongside that, there were weeks where I just thought, how am I going to eat? So it's balances. There are some weeks where you're in a crazy situation doing something amazing, and there are some weeks where you're just stuck in cov and you're skint and it's not much fun at all. But I think in my 20s I would have rather had a life that was full of ups and downs like that in those years when I could handle it and I didn't have anyone to look after other than myself. So yeah, in balance, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said you travelled. Where's the furthest and best place you've been?
Well, I travelled to America an awful lot because a lot of bands are in America. Touring America is always something where you have to follow a band and it's a common story kind of thing. So various bits of America have been great. Los Angeles I've always enjoyed. New York, Hollywood and Chicago and the big cities have been great. I've ended up in some right backwaters in America, which have been slightly alarming. And just seeing Europe as well. I mean, none of this would have been affordable, I don't think, if I was just doing a bog standard normal job. In 10 years that I was kind of doing it properly and seriously, I went to America like well over 60, 70 times, you know, which is incredible. You know, looking back, I remember my passport, it looked like I was an international jet setter or something, none of which I paid for, didn't pay for any of the hotels. So all of that was great. The furthest flung I went, because I never really went to Africa and I never went to Asia, and I'm still annoyed that in the job, I have gone to Asia myself, but not as part of the job. But I'm still annoyed that I never got to go to South America. I would have loved to have gone to South America. Yeah. The furthest I went was New Zealand for a crazy ass trip where I was asked to interview the band Tool, a metal band from a good while back. Flew out on the Monday, got to New Zealand Wednesday, just, you know, all over the shop, didn't know where I was. Interviewed Tool the next day and then flew back the next day. So in a week, I had 2 days in New Zealand and 4 days of flying. And by the time I got home, I didn't even know what planet was on, you know, and my body clock was all jiggered. But that was the furthest flung I went. But that is a big thing about freelancing, travel opportunities.
And I bet all the times you went to America were just different all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So that's
different bands, different places. Because, you know, little towns, little hick towns are entirely different than anywhere else. But the thing is, with freelancing, you'll be expected to be flexible and be able to travel like that. Yeah. Staff people who are stuck in the office have to stay in the office. They can't be sent off to America for a week because it jiggers up the whole thing. Whereas if they want those sort of jobs doing, editors will frequently go to freelancers because that's precisely why they get you, because you're flexible and you're open to drop everything at the drop of a hat and shoot off somewhere, you know. So that can be a big benefit of freelancing, seeing the world a bit.
Who is the biggest celebrity or well-known person you've ever met?
I mean, there's been plenty of people I've been nervous before interviewing, but that's because they're my sort of heroes, but they're not that well known. The biggest kind of big names that I ever met was probably Janet Jackson. I met once, interviewed her. Ozzy Osbourne I spent a while with as well. Eminem I met when he was just starting out, and that was very, very briefly. But Ozzy was probably the biggest because not only did I meet him, interview him, meet his family and everything, but also travelled with him on a tour bus for a day as well. Yeah, I met him in Albuquerque. I ended up going to San Antonio, I think, in Texas. So that was probably the biggest one. But I mean, what happens with these old professionals like Ozzy, who's been doing interviews for years, is that he was just a sweetheart. We were just sat at the back of his tour bus drinking Yorkshire tea, just having a natter. It's the young bands who are coming up who tend to be a bit more starry and kind of crazy, and you have to treat them carefully. But yeah, the list of bands is too big to mention, really. Yeah. In the 90s, I interviewed a lot of bands, Metallica, Marilyn Manson, just too many to mention, really. Name a band, and I probably did interview them at some point, especially in metal and hip-hop. But what you find is those people that you think, oh my God, he's been a celebrity for years, this is going to be really tough, are actually, because they're professional, have done it so many times, they're just really, really good, and they get on with it. I found out a lot with the film people that I spoke to. Oliver Stone, Jackie Chan, Tim Roth, who's that other guy? Ray Winston, Takeshi Kitano, Japanese director, brilliant director. Rod Steiger, who I interviewed just about a year before he died. A lot of these film people, again, because they know the process, the promotional process, what's involved, they were a breeze. So yeah, I've met some big names, but the bigger the name, the better they tend to be, to be honest with you. The better they tend to be in an interview.
Yeah, so you've met a lot of people.
Yeah, too many to remember.
Yeah.
Plus, every night, but you know what journalists do, they drink.
Yeah.
So there's a lot been forgotten.
Out of all, the pieces that you've written, like who or which one's been more recognisable to people?
Well, the one that a lot of people remember, I mean, I wrote a lot of reviews in the 90s when Britpop was coming up that utterly slagged off Britpop, and no one else was really doing that when it started.
Yeah.
No one else was really slagging Oasis off or slagging Cooler Shaker off. So those get remembered. The really harsh stuff, the hatchet jobs, get remembered a lot more than the articles where you're just being nice about people. Yeah. It's the articles when you're slagging something off that tend to get remembered. But the one that I remember the most and have most vivid memories of, and probably that I'm most proud of, is an article I interviewed Marilyn Manson over the course of a couple of days in Germany. And not only were the events of that trip just insane, because what he was doing on stage, he was slashing himself and all sorts of craziness was going on that trip, but that trip was crazy from the start to the end, actually. But more importantly, the interview I got with him, he was probably the most intelligent rock star I've ever spoken to in my life. And the interview, I cast it. He was really, really open, and it wasn't your interview about how many groupies do you get or how many drugs do you do. It was getting into some really interesting subjects. And the piece that I ended up with, I was really, really proud of. So that one sticks in my mind the most. The Marilyn Manson interview, 1997, I think.
So out of everything, do you think it's more positive? There's more positives to freelance than negative, or do you generally think that it's 50-50?
It depends where you are in your life, right? If you were 35, 40, and you've had a job, and you're thinking, I want to go freelance, I would not recommend it, because it means financial insecurity. It means having to run all aspects of your working life, from your schedule to your office to your plans to everything. Something that I was crap at. And that's why my finances were jiggered for so many years, and that's why the tax man was after me for a few years as well. Because, you're not taught how to sort all that out, how to run your own business. Because that's effectively what you're doing as a freelancer. You're running your own business, and you are the business, So if you were 35, 40 and thinking of starting all of that, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you're 20 and you've just left uni, and you have a choice to either start doing your own work and trying to do it in a freelance capacity, or get your feet under the door of a corporation, I would err on the side of freelancing, because it's freedom. However, if a corporation comes knocking and says, do you want to come work for us? For God's sake, work for them. But try and keep freelancing open as an option for some of your work, because it is total freedom. If you like sitting around, like today, we're in college, right? Freezing cold outside, but we had to come in. If you're a freelancer, you could just look out the window and think, right, I'm going to spend all day watching The Simpsons and eating toast. And you can do it, You've got that freedom over yourself. And you can work at those odd hours in the middle of the night when inspiration sometimes is at its most productive. And it's freedom and liberation from the strictures of work, which will inevitably happen to you. Because when you're 40, it's difficult being a freelancer and having a family, unless you're amazingly good and you get loads of work. But even then, it's a constant battle trying to think of new ideas. That's one of the tough things as well. So, sorry. I know I've waffled on, but what I'd say is, yes, in your 20s, possibly not after that.
Yeah, that's when you started, wasn't it?
Yeah, I started as soon as I left uni, 21.
Yeah, that's probably the better age.
6 months on the dole, watching every movie that I could, because I had nothing else to spend my money on. And then that happened that I started writing for the magazine. And it was good because I could safely say to my parents, I've got a job, even though it wasn't really a proper job. Yeah. But I could safely say to my parents I've got a job, and it was in something that I was obsessed with, music, all my life.
If you loved it as well, that's what...
If you don't love it, why would you bother freelancing
exactly.
it? If you don't love it, then there's no point even pursuing it. But it's nice now. I like teaching, don't get me wrong, but it's nice now to know that I kind of look back and I think, at least in my 20s, granted I made no money. In fact, I got slightly into debt doing it. But I made no big profits or anything. I did survive, though. I did give it a shot, rather than looking back thinking, it's great, I left uni and got a job.
Yeah.
Straight away,
So you've got the memories and stuff that no not everyone has. So that's
No, but I mean,
okay.
you know, what am I? I'm some poxy little kid from Cov who happened to be massively into music and writing.
Yeah.
And when those things come together, you get music journalism, I guess. And I was lucky. I was very, very lucky. I was jammy. I was landed on my feet to a certain extent. But I would heartily recommend it. The thing is, it's not like I want to do that, I'm going to go do that. You have to be good.
Yeah.
You know, like you're into film, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, or film or television. I would expect you, if you wanted to end up working freelance in those fields, I would expect you to be not obsessed, but know everything about it. Steep yourself in it. Read about it.
Yeah.
You know, really be engrossed in it and passionate about it. Because if you're not, it's the passion for it that sustains you through those lean times when you are skint. Because when I was skint, you know, living on 9p beans, I still used to think, this is still the best job in the world. You know, because I'm listening to music and I'm writing about it. What could be better? That's all I'm interested in. And it's your passion for it that gets you through those lean times. Without the passion, you'll just get your first month where your pops don't get paid or payments difficult to get, and you'll just think, sod this, I'm going to go and get a proper job, I'm going to go down TK Maxx and get a job or something. You know, passion will sustain you through the lean times, but there are good times as well.